Brett Bodine had a 20-year career in NASCAR, winning at every level he drove. But this did not come without challenges. By 2003, Brett was the only owner-driver in the Cup Series. He was consistently failing to qualify for races. You could say Brett was at the lowest of lows, with family issues, financial issues, and struggles on the racetrack. But rolling into Michigan, Brett had to block all of that out and just perform. Unfortunately, in practice, Bodine would be injured in a horrible wreck that would be a nail in the coffin of his race team. Brett Bodine was born in 1959 and from New York. Brett grew up surrounded by racing. He was the middle child of the three Bodine brothers. The three brothers enjoyed success in NASCAR from the 80s into the 2010s. Jeff, his older brother, won a Daytona 500, while Todd, the youngest, would solidify himself as a legend in the NASCAR Truck Series. All of the brothers would win at many levels in the NASCAR ranks, and the family name was around the sport for a few decades. Brett was a pretty popular guy himself, winning the Most Popular Driver award in the Busch Series early on in his career. He was a great modified racer, winning at the top level many times and a lot at the local level. He'd eventually be inducted into the Modified Hall of Fame and credited as one of the 50 best modified drivers of all time. Really quick, I want to focus on Brett's NASCAR career up to 2003. In 2.5 years of Busch Series competition, he racked up 16 poles and 5 wins. He was propelled to the Cup Series where he raced for the legendary owner Bud Moore. He'd make a switch to Kenny Bernstein's team and find victory lane once in the Cup Series. This is the place Bodine would call home for the first half of his career, piloting the Green 26 Ford sponsored by Quaker State. During his stay for Kenny's team, Bodine would get a handful of top 10s every year, but they did not have winning speed outside of his lone victory. He'd make the change to pilot Junior Johnson's car in 1995, but had a dreadful year with only one top 10. Then Brett Bodine purchased Junior Johnson's team at the conclusion of the 1995 season. He also bought a team from Kenny Bernstein. He merged both teams to form Brett Bodine Racing. So by 1996, Brett and brother Jeff were both owner-drivers. Brett didn't buy a team that had great speed, but the team had sponsorship from Lowe's. After just one season as an owner-driver, Lowe's walked away from Brett. The next 3 years were brutal for him. He didn't manage a single top 10 in over 100 consecutive races. Brett was only receiving about $3 million per year in sponsorship, while mid-pack and top teams were receiving about $5 to $10 million per season. After a couple of top 10s in 2001, Bodine landed an iconic sponsor in Hooters in 2002. Their first season would not produce much fruit at all. Bodine had his worst average finish, 30.8, in his entire Cup Series career racing full-time. Additionally, the team would miss 4 races. So it's safe to say that Brett was struggling. The results nor equipment was there, and neither was the money. A declining amount of money in the bank and a decline in staff led to a part-time season in 2003. 2003 was a rough time for Brett. Not only did he miss the Daytona 500, but he wrecked his car at Atlanta in his first start of the season. Brett, a veteran of nearly 500 Cup Series races, was at rock bottom. But this wasn't only in his career, as personally, he was going through a rough divorce. His partner was Diane, who was also a co-owner of Brett's team. Brett alleged that Diane had hit him and threatened to ruin him financially. To make matters even worse, heading into the 2003 Sirius 400 at Michigan, sponsor Hooters pulled the plug and announced it would be their last race sponsoring the team. But what could Brett do? The only thing he knew, just race. Despite the financial hardships, a dying team, being dropped by a sponsor, and a terrible divorce, Brett still had a job to do. And despite Hooters pulling the plug, Brett honored the agreement by holding up his end of the bargain and keeping the sponsor on the hood of his car. But unfortunately, things would not get better at the racetrack. During practice, Brett Bodine ran over some debris. His tire went down and he hit hard into the outside wall. And then this happened.
Wall's even stuck.
It does look that way, doesn't it?
I'm not so sure that maybe he didn't hit the wall and daze himself and just stayed in the throttle. He's already had hard impact.
That was a hard lick.
Yeah,
yes.
hard impact into that wall. And then this is just...
Boy, it sure looks like it's still accelerating.
Yeah, it does.
The car alarmingly picked up speed before it rammed into the tire barriers along the inside wall. And thank God they were there. According to Toledo Blade, Brett went unconscious after the first impact, preventing him from hitting the brakes until he hit the inside barrier. Brett was able to get out of the car himself before help could arrive. And you could imagine everyone at the track took a collective sigh of relief, because it was a nasty incident. The scenes of the medical team carrying Brett and placing him into the ambulance are just chilling to watch. Afterwards, he was taken to an area hospital for further evaluation. Interestingly, younger brother Todd Bodine watched all of this unfold right in front of him. He watched his brother slam into the outside wall, then into the inside wall a ton. Todd slowed down and parked his car beside his wounded brother's machine to make sure he was okay. Todd said he wasn't slowing down. He was still running 150 miles an hour. My only regret is that I didn't stop him from hitting the wall. I should have sacrificed my car because I could tell he was knocked out. That's why I was running alongside of him. And you can see in the replay, Todd's car in the background watching everything unfold. Brett's crew chief stated, "I'm glad they put those tires down on the inside wall because that really helped a bunch. They're really working hard at this soft wall issue and taking care of these drivers." This wreck was a testament to NASCAR's new safety measures in the wake of a slew of fatalities and controversies. These conversations typically included the Hans device, but also the new soft wall technology. As far as injury, Brett suffered a broken shoulder, broken teeth, and a severe concussion. And Brett, in an interview with the Scene Vault podcast, stated that he could have given up right there. He was at rock bottom, injured with a destroyed car. Instead, he called on his older brother, Jeff, to race in his place. And Jeff, who hadn't made a start all season, at 52 years young, drove the car from last up to 13th place. Now, Brett didn't buy enough tires for the entire race, so Jeff retired the car just past halfway, but it is still such a great story. Brett, all beaten up in bed, watched his brother drive through the field. In such a rough time in life, this had to have been such a great moment for Brett, seeing his car drive up through the field. Later in the week, Brett had surgery on his broken clavicle. He was sidelined for about a month and a half before making his return at Pocono, but failed to qualify. With no major sponsorship, Brett had one more shot to push back the impending death of his race team. He crowdsourced sponsorship by allowing fans to pay $500 to get their name on his car at Indianapolis. With this money, he could make it to the track, and if he made the field, he could finally pay off some outstanding bills. Unfortunately, he did not qualify for the race, losing out by 1,000th of a second. Brett stated that after the team missed the 2003 Brickyard 400, they were done. Brett was out of money. The bank came and took the bus he was living in and put a lock on the race shop. He borrowed $1,000 from his brothers to get an apartment. In this apartment, he had a TV on a cardboard box with a lawn chair to sit in and to sleep in. That's how bad it was. Unfortunately, Brett would never qualify for a cup race again. He would close his team officially before the end of the season. It's not unreasonable to think that this crash played a part in the closure of his team. As previously mentioned, this was sad because Bodine was the only owner-driver in this series. This really ended the era of owner-drivers that had started in the 90s in the wake of Alan Kulwicki's success that proved it could be done. Despite the depressing end of his racing career, Brett was able to bounce back and make a career in NASCAR after driving. He has worked in many roles, such as the Director of Cost Research, Test Driver for NASCAR, and the Chairman of the Driver Approval Committee. Brett has also been involved in many R&D projects. And who could forget, he served a 15-year stint as the pace car driver. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.